Hello aspirants, this is me Yasmin Gill presenting to you the PIB highlights of 31st of January. So you can follow all these videos on this particular link, plus you can also rate and review the course. So let's begin, and today we'll be mainly focusing on the economic section because it's a very important day. Today economic survey was presented, so we'll be doing it very properly. So let's begin. Firstly, under polity section, we have presidential address. So this has been given to both houses. It's given whenever the financial year begins. Simultaneously, the address mentions certain small points which we'll be going through very quickly. So firstly, it talks about that this very year we'll be celebrating 1000th birth anniversary of the great saint or philosopher Ramanujacharya, who belonged to Tamil Nadu. Then there's a centenary year of Champaran Satyagraha as well. Then he also talked of Antyodaya philosophy of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, and Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay's centenary celebrations would be titled, or this year would be titled as Garib Kalyan Varsh, particularly to celebrate the contribution of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay. Then he talked about Pradhan Mantri Urja Ganga. Under Pradhan Mantri Urja Ganga, we are coming up with the national gas pipeline project extending through these cities. Do check out where these cities lies. Then he also mentioned that northeast states are also referred to as Ashtalakshmi, that is 8 Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess of money or prosperity. Then Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya were brought on rail map. Also Agartala, that is the capital of Tripura, has been connected via broad gauge line. Simultaneously, India hosted this very year 8th BRICS Summit at Goa and 6th Heart of Asia Conference at Amritsar. So in case you need to revise certain other happenings around the year, you can just go on PIB highlights and you can click on the e-releases, and under the releases section you can get the whole text of President's address. Thereby there are a lot many schemes mentioned here. There was no point in doing all the schemes once again, so you can just go on it and revise the same in case you wish to. Next, under economic section, we have a lot many things. Firstly, we have the executive development program, not that important. So Rajiv Gandhi National Aviation University, with collaboration with US, has come up with a special program to boost Indian aviation sector, and it has come up with its first executive development program. Next, we have index of 8 core industries, something which we do every month. So this you can do by yourself. Next, we have Operation Clean Money, very important, to be started by Income Tax Department. This is for e-verification of those people or those large cash deposits which were made during the demonetization period. So online verification will be done, and in case you are already declared your income under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, then this verification will not be done further on. Also, anybody who is sent such a notice by Income Tax Department has to respond to the same within 10 days to avoid any sort of other enforcement actions by Income Tax Department. Next, we have economic survey and the corresponding highlights. So firstly, we'll be going through major trends. This is not something which you have to remember, but definitely you can use them in your answers and even in case of interview. So firstly, growth rate of GDP in 2016-17 at constant market prices is 7.1%, but it is thought to recover back to 7.5% in 2017-18. Also, the inflation trends were relatively under control. Headline inflation is measured by CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, and mainly, as usual, the inflation is mainly driven by narrow group of food items, particularly the pulses. Then we have export growth, which was usually negative. It was reversed somewhat during 2016-17, though not completely. Also, trade deficit and current account deficit were in the respective bounds. So we have strong macroeconomic fundamentals. Rupee also performed better as compared to major emerging markets. Agriculture sector is estimated to grow at 4.1% in the coming fiscal year, but the industrial sector growth, it is relatively moderate. Next, we have corporate sector performance. So corporate sector performance, which was subdued during the previous regime, it saw a small amount of sales growth in Q2, but this was actually above what was seen as a constant growth in Q1. But still, corporate sector is not completely revived. And we have certain external developments which can impact India as well. So overall, if we look at the world GDP, this might rise particularly due to the fiscal stimulus in US, but there are a lot many risks. For example, higher oil prices, geopolitical factors, sharp currency movements, for example, in Chinese yuan, etc. Also, protectionism is growing worldwide, and this might also impact India's exports. Then we come to legislative or legal accomplishments which were done in last year. So three main. One is the bankruptcy law was overhauled, particularly the exit problem was solved for the companies which were not performing well. Then we had codified the monetary policy thing with RBI, and lastly Aadhaar was given a legal basis. Next, we have Financial position of states. This is also very important, particularly in context of the report submitted by FRBM committee. So what has happened is we have seen in the past few years the financial position of states has improved. One of the factors for it is that Center's FRBM Act was correspondingly followed by fiscal responsibility legislation in the states. But this particular legislation, that is FRL, was not the only reason that financial position improved. There were various other reasons. For example, overall GDP growth was high. Transfers to states already increased by the recommendations of 13th Finance Commission. Overall, the central government's revenues also increased and corresponding increase took place in state revenues as well. Also, because of the debt restructuring package offered by center to states, the states were free from the burden of interest payments. Then, the states had to spend less on social sector expenditure. Why? Because center took up most of the schemes under their central sponsored schemes. So this is how not only fiscal responsibility legislation but a lot many factors were responsible simultaneously for the improved financial position of states. Otherwise also, if you look at the contribution from states, it was not null. So it is not all due to the increased revenue that came to center and was correspondingly passed to states. There were a lot many good efforts by states as well. For example, state did not indulge in extravagance. Also, revenue expenditure rose quite slightly, though there was a lot of revenue upsurge, but still states spent less in the revenue expenditure sector. Also, off-budget expenditure also fell down. Plus, the errors that usually used to occur from the side of states in the forecasting, it reduced. So this showed their enhanced budget formation skills. Next, we have fiscal challenges which might be encountered by state. One is the pay commission recommendation have to be implemented, right? And the second one is the payments that the increasing amount of payments that had to be done for Uday bonds. Uday is for restructuring the DISCOM or the distribution companies of the electricity sector. So this too might prove to be a challenge to states' fiscal performance as well. Lastly, what the economic survey talks of is that in order to keep the pace of fiscal performance going on in the states, we have to incentivize good fiscal performance. Next, we come to labor migration in India. So we see interesting trends captured by cohort-based migration metric. It is actually a tool used to measure the labor migration in India. So what are the trends shown? Firstly, interstate mobility has seen a rise or risen. Then this particular migration trend is larger for females as well. So female migration has increased. Also migration, particularly for work and education, has increased. This shows that economic opportunities are increasing, which is a very, very good trend. Simultaneously, one very surprising factor is that though the political borders, they try to check the migration, but language, which is supposedly a big barrier in I would say a multicultural country like India, but in case of migration, language did not act that much as a barrier. So this is very much a positive trend. And if we actually have to tap upon this, this has to be supplemented by various policy actions. For example, we have to ensure for migrants food security benefit, health care. Then we have to ensure for them interstate self-registration process so that they get benefit out of all the schemes. Currently, multiple schemes exist, but there is a lot much need of interstate coordination. Next, we have redistributive resource transfer, very important. So see, firstly, we'll understand what does redistributive resource transfer mean. So it is actually defined as the amount of devolution that is given to state depending upon the state's contribution to the aggregate GDP. So this is how redistributive resource transfer is defined. And among the top 10 recipients of this RRT, Sikkim stands at the first place. And see, what has happened now is that government or the government of India actually saw the link, or it was actually trying to capture the link between this transfer and the economic outcomes of the states. So naturally, if there was a good amount of redistributive resource transfer, the economic outcomes should have seen a rise, right? But this did not happen. In fact, there was a suggestive evidence of a negative relationship between the redistributive resource transfer and the economic outcomes of state, which is a worrisome trend. So what happened was, for example, larger RRT flows actually negatively impacted the fiscal effort. By fiscal effort, I mean tax revenue. So what happened was, states which used to get larger amount of redistributive resource transfer, they did not bother much about their tax revenues, and therefore their tax revenues fell. So which is a negative trend. Then other than that, so economic survey mentions this particular RRT as a curse. Simultaneously, it talks of a natural resource curse which might occur in the future trend. So what is this natural resource curse? See, states which are rich in natural resources, particularly the minerals, so they should actually be showing more of economic development, but their economic development parameters or the trends did not show a very good picture. So this is what is known as natural resource curves. So in that context, center and state must both work towards both of these curves, that is RRT curves and natural resource curves. And what is now talked of is that why not link RRT to the fiscal and governance efforts of the part of states. Thereby states will be incentivized to act better in terms of fiscal prudence. So other than that, what was talked of is that rather than RRT, you can actually move on to universal basic income. Talking about the challenges that might occur in the India's progress, particularly in the social sector, we have the challenges as ambivalence about property rights. Then state capacity is very weak in context of service delivery. Lastly, we have to privatize public enterprises which are facing a lot of difficulty. Privatization is a big issue in India, right? So economic survey talks about the solutions. It talks that certain sectors, for example, civil aviation, banking and fertilizer need to be privatized more. Simultaneously, it talks of the reasons why the state capacity for service delivery is less. So it talks about the corruption, red tapeism, etc. Also, it talks of that state capacity is particularly low in service delivery. Why? Because competitive populism is focused more as compared to competitive service delivery. Then the economic survey talks of fiscal activism. So see, what happened was after the 2008-9 financial crisis, more of the trend shifted towards deficit rather than curbing the debt. So there was a lot of fiscal stimulus which was pumped in. But this is not a strategy which can be followed by India, because our experience shows that we have to not focus on rapid growth because it is dangerous. Rather, we have to move steadily. Also, it is shown that it's better to move with the help of rules, with the help of a set order. For example, FRBM, that is Fiscal Responsibility Budgetary Management Act, rather than going for a fiscal spree. Next, need of a centralized public sector rehabilitation agency. So let's go through the overview of it because we are short on time. So what has happened is that because of the rising NPAs in the public sector banks particularly, and also the twin balance sheet problem is the problem faced by corporate balance sheets as well as the banking sector. So in that context, what is seen is that due to the failure of the private run ARCs to curb the problem of NPAs, there is a need felt of a centralized public sector asset rehabilitation agency. This is also something which is suggested or which is actually proven to be a benefit in East Asian economies particularly, and therefore we can also use it and set up this particular agency to curb the NPAs. Next, universal basic income scheme, very important. See, it is mainly to curb down or act as an alternative to the large amount of state subsidies which are given for various programs. But there is a lot of implementation challenges in case of this particular scheme. For example, rather than a replacement of the current existing social programs, it might become an add-on to. Therefore, a big burden to states' financial resources. Simultaneously, two main prerequisites are needed if we need to implement UBI. One is there has to be a functional Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile system. Simultaneously, center state has to negotiate on the cost sharing. Why? Because cost sharing is a large one. For example, cost sharing might turn out to be 4 to 5% of GDP, while the current subsidies, they actually cost only about 3% of GDP. So in the end, we have the statement concluded by economic survey. Just go through it. Then we have creating one economic India. So in context of economic integration, three factors have worked a lot. One is technology, another is economics, last is politics. But laws are still not uniform for India. Also, we have a good amount of internal trade, but still GST will act as a good amount of benefit, and it will actually normalize interstate trade more. And we have also seen that constitution itself is acting as a barrier to creation of one economic India. How? Because constitution favors the sovereignty of states and thereby allows the center and state to restrict the trade and commerce. This is given in the part of, I think it's part 13, whereby trade finance is mentioned. So in that context, center and state have the freedom to actually restrict the trade and commerce in respect of their own self-interests. So in that context, constitution favors the sovereignty of states, and this is also as interpreted by courts as well. Then we have property tax, which can be leveraged to actually increase the revenue of cities, particularly urban local bodies. Then there's the talk of apparel and leather industry, which can boost the job sector in India. Just go through it, it's very self-explanatory. So several measures that have been taken, particularly in textile industries, entering into an FTA with EU and UK. Then we have GST that will actually rationalize the discrimination against man-made fibers, and non-leather based footwear. Then we have labor law reforms as well. So just do read about this particular topic in the PIB as well. So these are the MCQs which were asked in today's session. Just go through them. And thank you so much, friends. That's it for today.